Time now for our PIX panel. Joining me this week is City Hall Bureau Chief for the New York Post, Craig McCarthy, and New York City political reporter Jeff Coltin. Good morning, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Let's move into a discussion of this migrant crisis with the dire warning given by Mayor Adams this week that these new restrictions on families and housing families in communal settings could lead to people sleeping on the streets. He was fairly blunt about it. Craig, how soon will we see people on the streets?
Well, I guess that's the answer we don't really have right now of how many of these. We know how many notices have been given out. We don't know when they were given out, when they expire. Obviously, it's a rolling basis because it depends whenever these migrants have entered the system at this point.
Jeff, the mayor's really prided himself. In fact, he did during the press conference where he announced this, and no family has slept on the streets. This seems contrary to that, no?
Yes, it's an interesting situation where he's bragging that, oh, you know, Los Angeles and other cities do have folks sleeping on the streets, but we haven't. And now, I guess it's just a continuation of Adams' kind of rhetorical strategy here, where he's saying it's bad, it's bad, it's bad, it's going to get worse. And this is, again, kind of a pitch to Washington to give us more support and also to the migrants themselves to please stop coming. But there's an interesting balance there between, yes, the politics, the rhetoric of it, and then the actual on-the-ground service of providing these people housing and services.
Well, Jeff, it doesn't seem like deterrence is working, though, where we're averaging 4,000 new migrants every week.
In fact, yes, the numbers are going up, and New York is in this interesting situation where the city is being much more generous to migrants, and the word is out than other places.
Well, we also have to see, too, because they cracked down on Venezuelans at the border, and this was part of the conversation that Hochul came out with Biden this week, or the White House this week, as chief of staff, was that they're saying that this will slow at the border, that Venezuelans have made up the bulk of people at the border. However, with this, I guess, upped enforcement on deporting Venezuelans at the border who don't qualify for asylum should slow it here. But we've seen those 3,700, 3,900, and then last week was 3,600. So it depends how long it takes for that to.
As we've been saying for months, this isn't going anywhere. Let's pivot to another troubling situation, the war in Israel right now. But let's focus on the local angles here, because we've had dueling protests, pro-Israeli, pro-Palestinian protests. The mayor says he's very proud of the NYPD for the way he's kept everyone relatively safe, but he himself caught a little flack, Craig, for not being supportive enough of the Palestinian and Muslim communities in this time of trouble in the Middle East. What was his response?
I mean, he was pretty dismissive of it. I mean, he was on a call the other day and kind of shut it down. He muted the person that was raising the concern. I mean, he's been very pro-Israel through this entire process.
Jeff, is this fair of the mayor? He kind of said, well, there's good and evil here. And I see it very black and white was his response when he was pressed on this. Is that completely fair?
The mayor is not really an international political actor, and
Fair,
I can understand that if you are somebody in the State Department and you really need to be doing the negotiations, this is something to think about. If you're the mayor of the city of New York, I would think that your first responsibility is to the people living in the city, and there are tons of Jews and Israelis. There's also tons of Palestinians and broader Arabs in the Muslim community. New York City has, of course, the biggest population of both of these groups in the entire country. And so it doesn't seem to me like it should be difficult to just show a little more just like care, just a little more empathy or sympathy to these communities and saying this is a horrible situation. But I mean, we're not naive. This is politics, and of course, everybody is expected to take a more kind of political position on who is to blame here. I don't necessarily know if the mayor of New York City really needs to be doing that.
Well, there is the practical local implications. We've seen anti-Jewish crimes such as swastika drawn on the 2nd Avenue deli. We saw a gentleman with a turban, knocked off on a bus and told we don't wear that here. So you are seeing that uptick in some of these stuff, somewhat similar to what we saw after 9/11 in a very difficult way. Craig, is the mayor doing enough to address those very real New York situations?
I mean, he said he's up to, NYPD police of these things. I mean, hate crimes have always been an issue in New York City of trying to police them, right? Because you're trying to get at what the intent of the intent and what is in somebody's mind when they're committing such an act or a crime or something like that.
And the mayor said he is worried most, when it comes to a serious situation about a lone wolf, and there's almost no way to predict or prevent that if someone's truly acting alone. Jeff, let's move on to some reporting you did this week on the Rikers tracker. It's out of the comptroller's office. Explain what that is and how you discovered some troubling trends.
Yes, so the city of New York doesn't put out a lot of really great statistics. The mayor's office doesn't put out great statistics on Rikers, on the city jails. So the comptroller, Brad Lander, who's of course been a critic of the mayor, has tried to fill that void and had a really nice webpage tracking everything that's all the trends of violence on Rikers, of the amount of people coming into city jails, going out of city jails. He updates it every month, and this month is again troubling. I mean, every month it just seems like things are getting worse on Rikers Island. The one tiny bright point is there were fewer reported fights on Rikers this month. That's great. But other than that, there's more people coming in. There's so many people that are missing their court dates and missing hospital visits.
I'm gonna refer people to your reporting, and you do a lot of it on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it. Check it out there. But I want to get to a moment that Craig had that was very interesting in the press room with Mayor Adams, who got into the AI game with the city and doing some work to reach out to constituents on the phone in languages that weren't him, using AI. You had a very interesting moment where you created something in the mayor's voice. Let's take a listen, then we'll chat about it.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir.
How are you?
Good, man. How you doing?
Finally caught up on sleep from your trip. I just want to play something for you quick.
Hello, I am Eric Adams. I really like Craig McCarthy. He is an amazing reporter and I respect him. The New York Post is my favorite publication.
Nice slander, Craig. So I was able to do this in 5 minutes with $1.
Yes.
So hearing that, how do you feel that using these robocalls and AI to generate your voice creates serious ethical problems, also very serious concerns for misinformation in the city?
Well, first of all,
So kudos to you for something creative. It was appreciated. It was a moment of levity. The mayor said he did actually like you. But to your point about abuse of this technology, what did the mayor say?
Well, he said that they are using it ethically, which, I mean, we can, politicians and people in election law can argue of whether or not portraying your voice and speaking in different languages is any kind of violation or any kind of ethical issues with that. I think what I was really getting at in this issue is that we've kind of opened Pandora's box in using this. There's no disclaimer at the top. There's no disclaimer at the end. So when I was talking to experts on this situation is what's to stop somebody who is not using this in a productive way to go then say, tell people to make a run on the banks, to tell people that they have to evacuate, there's a terrorist attack, and causing confusion, widespread, panic. Okay. So it's important.
Yeah, Craig, Jeff, I appreciate both your reporting. I will recommend everyone checking out your reporting.